disappointment. Before I get started, I want to tell you that this is your defining moment in your life. We have a great opportunity in front of us. Whether we go through a recession or a depression, it is a fundamental change where people are going to have to leave their safe environments and they're going to have to try new things. And this is the natural process of capitalism. It goes through these cycles, and the cycles are great because they force people to figure out what's important, and they force businesses to figure out what they stop businesses from getting lazy, and they try new things. And it's small business and entrepreneurship that really makes that all happen. So what you guys do, this is your moment. So go after it. So now I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my day yesterday. Is this too loud for everybody? I went through a series of entrepreneurial crises, and that was the typical part of my day. But then I stepped out of my comfort zone, which is actually getting broader and broader, and I actually tried to record a song, and you are actually going to possibly hear me sing later, and you're going to know that I am not a singer. But I went in there and I tried to record a song, a different song than you're going to hear here. And getting outside your comfort zone teaches you all sorts of things, but one thing it teaches you is that you do get somewhat injured, because I don't know if you hear it, but my voice is a little hoarse today. But it was partly because I was shrieking at the top of my lungs as a part of this song that I hope you never have to hear, but you may. It was fun to do. And then the other thing I did was I took my boys to the Lakers game, and it reminded me of another thing, because the Lakers had a game. The game went to I think it was 127-127, tied with the Pacers with 3 seconds left. And they passed it to who else? Kobe Bryant. And he took the shot, and he made it. 3 seconds left, won the game. Hallelujah. It was fantastic. And it made me also think of another thing that we need, and we need heroes. And those heroes have to come out at times like this. And so you guys, being supporters of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs are heroes. Heroes take long odds at extraordinary outcomes. I mean, Kobe Bryant takes the shot. He goes for it. He takes that shot. And if the shot doesn't go in, he's the GOAT. But if the shot goes in, he's the hero. And heroes try these long odds at extraordinary outcomes, and they make it happen. And so it's all those entrepreneurs, you guys know this, that do these extraordinary things. They try all these different things, and some of them actually work, and some of them make our lives so much better and easier and happier. So thank you all for that, for keeping these entrepreneurs going. So I always have this view. I guess my favorite teacher was the one who told me to read between the lines. And sometimes I didn't even read. I just read between the lines. But the press paints a very grim picture. Companies are laying off employees. We're all seeing that. Worldwide markets are down. Lending is frozen. Real estate values have plummeted. Consumer and capital spending has slowed. And investors are confused. And I'm sure all of you are occasionally confused too. I certainly am. But one thing has not changed, and that is that innovation keeps pushing forward. In fact, if you see a chart of innovation, it's remarkable, but with a slight lag, when there are recessions or bubbles bursting or tulips going down or whatever, the innovation actually has a spike up. And actually, during the big boom of 1999, the innovation, during that time, innovation, pure technological innovation, actually went down. And just slightly. I mean, it moved forward. But what was happening was there were rocket scientists that were doing Hotels.com. But now rocket scientists are going, well, look, I can't get a job out there, so I'm going to figure out how to get a rocket to Mars. And that's what I really wanted to do all along anyway, and that's what I'm going to do. And so innovation just keeps pushing. And what's cool about innovation is it's the thinking on innovation came through Moore's law, where they said, wow, $1,000 worth of compute power doubles every 18 months. But it turns out that has actually even accelerated past that, because there are more people innovated, there are more people interconnected, there are more of us around the world that are connected. And so if I'm a scientist, I look and I see what all the papers are that have been written in a certain field, and then I know that I can innovate beyond that. And those people don't have to just be in the Silicon Valley anymore. They can be everywhere, all the way around the world. All they need is an internet connection. So innovation is really starting to accelerate. When Moore said that, they thought he was nuts. But sure enough, it was hitting the mark. And now it turns out the acceleration in innovation is accelerating. And it's more like every 16 months or every 14 months that the compute power doubles. But it isn't just compute power, it's everything. Everything, all technology, all science, all innovation grows exponentially. And so our worlds, we don't even notice all the incredible changes that have happened in our worlds, but they grow faster and faster and faster. And so all the innovation that's happened over the last, say, 100 years is going to be, that amount of change in our world is going to happen in, say, the next 15 or 20 years, and maybe the next 2 years after that. So we're going to see extraordinary change moving forward. And, the markets are going to fly high, go low, whatever, but the innovation will continue regardless. I'll give you a little example of the change that we're going to have to go through. Okay, you guys are professors, so I'm going to get my dates wrong. But anyway, let's say 1423. 1423, somebody's talking to a wall. And they're in Salem, Massachusetts. They're burned as a witch. If in, say, 1968, they're talking to a wall, and they're in Berkeley, California, they're stoned. If now, I think there's one other, but anyway, in now, you see me talking to a wall. I've got a cell phone. And so people have changed their behaviors in extraordinary ways. And we are getting socialized in many, many different ways, and we don't even know it. It just happens. And we're going to see some really interesting change. So let's play with that a little bit. Here are some inventions over the last 50 years. I'll run through these. Nuclear power, jets, the pill, the bomb, microwave, credit cards, integrated circuits, satellites, photocopier, space travel, fax, computers, email, voicemail, fiber optics, biotech, cell phones, MRIs, nanotech, voicemail, internet, digital cameras, web browsers, DVRs, search engines, smartphones. That's the last 50 years. If you go back another 50 or maybe another 75, You have indoor plumbing. You have, electricity, basic electricity. You have Polaroid cameras. You have some things that happen that we all take totally for granted now. And they have, and that was like a 100-year stint where all, people were living without all that stuff. And now, so the last 100 years has been quite extraordinary. The last 50 years has happened technology has moved along very quickly. So, future possibilities. So, stretch your imagination. And even with all of your wildest dreams, you go forward 10 years and it'll be so far beyond this that you can, and you're going to look at this and think this is science fiction, but it'll be way beyond this. Abundant, cheap water, non-invasive health devices. What I'm looking for is, non-invasive health devices so they don't have to cut you up. But I'm really because I travel a lot, I'm looking for non-invasive security because, I don't know about you guys, but I go through those metal detectors and I get the probe and I get the, whatever, the probe. Not great. And then, actually, there is a company that we funded where you walk through this this thing that looks like a metal detector, and the guy behind the curtain sees you completely naked. And that's a security application, but there are all sorts of other applications for something like that. So then, net zero energy homes. I'm not sure exactly what this means, because I do know that if you build a new home, you can never make up for the energy that you took in building that new home. But anyway, you could have non-zero energy homes. Reigniting batteries that charge a lot, move things along. Pilotless or electric cars. We can be we can have flying cars. We can travel into space further. We might reach Mars. Education for the masses, where you great professors can put yourself on video and compete with other professors, and you get your face out there in India first, and could end up being the source of education for India. And then the best would naturally rise to the top. All computing from the cloud, 3D on-demand entertainment. I'm looking forward to where you actually you feel like you can interact like a holodeck in Star Trek. Storable, instant, fresh meals. I've always felt like when I was a kid, I was hungry all the time. And I always felt like I could just, I didn't want to stop what I was doing, so I wanted to say, just food, now, and have it just drop in my hand. So I'm looking forward to that. Genetic disease prediction, we'll be able to figure that. There'll be a cure for cancer, AIDS, and malaria, but of course we'll have new diseases. But we're going to live longer. Better new sources of energy, very fast internet to the home, which could change people always say, well, what would you do with faster internet? And it turns out it just keeps coming. People keep coming up with new things, and there will be more and more. New life forms, cure for heart disease, be a lot of great things. Okay, so now let's put it all into perspective, because we are going into a really tough time. It will be tough. But let's talk about some of these other depressions we've had. In 1873, the Vienna Stock Exchange collapsed, triggering the Long Depression. But during that Long Depression, the nation was electrified and the second industrial revolution emerged. And that started companies like AT&T, General Electric, Chevron, Honeywell, Sears, Merck, Tootsie Roll, Maytag, Unical, Kodak. That period of time was a very down period. Some of the greatest companies in the world were started then. Okay, then during the Great Depression, stock markets crashed worldwide, and other great companies got their start. So Texas Instruments, United Technologies, 20th Century Fox, Polaroid, and HP got its start, and HP was the first of this new type that allowed people to go moonlight and kind of start their own businesses, and that is part of what was great about the Silicon Valley. So during the recession of 1957, the Cold War escalated, and this was when Fairchild, this is when they took those semiconductors and they said, oh, these things are really interesting, these transistors are really interesting. Why don't we just turn them upside down and lay it all down on a big plate of semiconductor material, and then we can lay lots of these transistors together. And that was the beginning of Fairchild, Intel, National Semiconductor, TI, on and on and on. In the 1974 recession, oil prices quadrupled. And by the way, then they came way, we had a terrible energy crisis, and Carter was saying, oh, we got an energy crisis, and then everybody filled up their tanks, and we had a shortage, and it got worse. And then they came crashing down. But then Gates and Allen started Microsoft. In the early 1980s recession, interest rates hit 20%, unemployment hit 10%. This was a bad time. And then all these other companies were started. Just a rash of new technologies, biotech and technology companies, Amgen, LSI Logic, Adaptec, they're all there. E-Trade. E-Trade was started during that time. In the early 1990s, the high-yield debt market collapsed and the Gulf War began. And then the Cold War ended and innovation continued. So we had Broadcom and Hartport and all sorts of interesting new companies that came out during this period. And then the bubble burst in 2001, and then there was another, and it was called the last recession. Turns out it wasn't. And some venture capitalists kept the faith, and Skype and Baidu and Focus Media and some other great companies were all started during that time. And actually, although Google wasn't started during that time, that was when the company turned on an accelerator. I mean, they hit their stride during that time because there were a lot of search engines all at one time there. And Google really exploded during that time. So now what? Don't panic. It's a funny picture. Don't cling to the past. This is a temptation to sort of hang on to whatever you had before. The whole thing has changed. We're all in this together, so stick together. And then you have to look at it, is this a crisis or an opportunity? This is apparently, I don't really read Chinese, but they've told me, this probably means kick me in the butt or something. But this, I think, means crisis and opportunity. And so you can look at those letters either, is this a crisis or is this an opportunity? And I would argue that looking at it as an opportunity is much healthier. And then it's a new game. So you have to look at this and just say, I don't know if you were all game players, but I was. And I used to play Risk. And so I'm looking at this, and then I played this recently, Risk 2033 or something. And it's an entirely new game, but it has a lot of the same strategic thinking. I think that's the way you have to look at this world. And any of you chess players? Okay, I see a few chess players out there. This is like, the other guy just took your queen. What are you going to do? You go for it. So the tide moves in, the tide goes out, the tide moves in, the tide goes out. Innovation just keeps marching. And then I thought I'd do a little research here. And it turns out that there is, I call this the price of pessimism, because if you want to be safe, you put all your money in T-bills. And this line down at the bottom, yes, it was definitely safe, but your $1,000 after about 28 years is now worth about $4,000. And that's not inflation adjusted. But if you put your money into stocks, it's now worth about 4 times that much. And if you put it into venture capital, it's worth 40 times that much. So there is a huge price to pessimism. There's a tendency for people to be pessimistic because it's easier, but it doesn't pay. Okay, and then I did some other research because, you know, you see a crisis, you want to figure out what happened in the past. So these numbers are GDP per capita normalized, and this was the cost of communism. This is what happened. I normalized it to, 1820. And so I put US, India, and China in the same place in 1820. And this is how the communist countries have done and how the capitalist or free market economy has done. And that's really great. And we all knew this because America has been great, and we hope it'll be great again. But then I did it with more recent numbers. And I looked and I said, well, gee, India and China really created free markets and for themselves, and now they're starting to rock and roll. And so let's see what's happened here. Okay, so somehow the U.S. is now flattening out. These are just growth rates, but the U.S. seems to be growing a lot slower than India and China as they've marketed more. So I thought, God, what's the fundamental problem here? Why can't we grow faster? And this is what I call the sucking sound of socialism. And what it looks like to me is, oh, well, this is just government spending versus GDP. And if you look at this chart, you kind of go, oh yeah, of course, the government's going to grow as the GDP grows. But if you look at it in another way, this top line, the turquoise line, shows GDP as a percentage, government spending as a percentage of GDP. Government spending has gone from, in effect, 7% to 37%. And now, of course, it's going to spike up. You know, it might be at 40, 42. And it did spike up during World War II. But something else happened, and that was, one good thing, one bad thing. The blue line shows GDP growth in America. And it shows that there was a lot of volatility in the GDP growth when there was less government spending, but the overall rate of growth was much higher. The average rate of growth was much higher. And so I think trying to have the government solve our problems is not the solution. This is what's happened when the government came in and decided to start to regulate the venture business. The venture-backed IPOs went to zero. That has to do with Sarbanes-Oxley and 409A and you name it. Mark-to-market, FASB. It all adds up to nobody wants to take anything public anymore. Or it's almost impossible to go public. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach vocabulary. These are good words on the left-hand side, and these are bad words on the right-hand side. So when you see these words in print, or you hear these words, be aware that there are good words and bad words. The good words are opportunity. Bad words, entitlement. Good words, earnings. Bad words are rights. Think about that. Good words is business solution, and bad words is government intervention. Good words are let losers die, and bad words are bailout. Good words are freedom, and bad words are regulation. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we discovered. It's a little venture capital secret. If a company can, this is where we find we make the most money. If a company can eliminate some part of a business of either the income statement or the balance sheet, other than sales and cash, if they can eliminate some portion of the balance sheet, they have an interesting business model. So Amazon, well, software in general eliminated inventory, but Amazon eliminated inventory and accounts receivable. Parametric was this company, very innovative software company, and what they did was they eliminated excess engineering costs. They figured out that they could actually do their engineering for 3% when all the rest of the industry was at 19%. So they figured out how to get rid of engineering costs. Hotmail and Skype eliminated the marketing expense. This was when I said to the Hotmail guys, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, can't you just put a message at the bottom of everybody's email? By the way, sorry about this. This created a lot of spam, whatever. But can't you just put a little message at everybody's email that says, P.S., I love you, get your free email at Hotmail. And you know, they did not like the idea. Sabir did not like this idea. And we fought about it for a while, and they finally said, okay, we'll do it, but no P.S. I love you. We'll just say, get your free email at Hotmail. And I said, okay, but the world is going to have, you know, it's not going to be as peaceful a place. But they said, we're going to do it this way. So, so it spread within 11 million users in 18 months. And that was the fastest spreading of any product ever in the history of the world. And then Sabir sent one email to his friend in India, and within 3 weeks we had 100,000 Hotmail users in India. And there were not even 100,000 computers in India at that time. So suddenly we were breaking open a whole new market, unbelievable, but it required zero marketing expense because I was sending it to you, you were sending it to somebody else, they were sending it to somebody else, and the company didn't have to put their hands all over it. And then Overture, Google, Baidu all got rid of ad sales expense. They don't have to go sell ads. People just go because of the search engine. They just go and go and go, and then they just say, oh, you want to advertise? Here. So then let's think about all the revolutions that have been created. And they've all been created really by businesses here. And these revolutions renovated our way of thinking. They changed our way of thinking. So the bookstore was always the bookstore until Amazon came along, and then there was a whole different way of thinking about buying books. The post office was always the post office until Hotmail came along, and then people could write a quick letter to somebody in a very quick and efficient way. And then the telephone company was always these hardwired phones that went all over the place, and then and they cost us a lot of money, and Skype turned the whole telephone industry on its ear by giving away free service through the internet. And then the broadcasters were just more recently completely bamboozled by Google and Baidu coming in and creating search, because with search you could then just see exactly what you wanted to see. You could, quickly get to whatever you wanted to get to. And then the trading post where we used to all go to trade or whatever has been changed by eBay. So I always look and I say, you know, when I see politicians saying we got a transportation problem, we got an, you know, and I've got the solution. I'm the, you know, I have an energy policy, or I have a transportation policy, or a medical policy, global peace policy. It turns out that these problems all seem to be identified by the politicians, although maybe even a little late, but solved by the businesses. And so I went through and I sort of identified a bunch of our companies that are solving a bunch of these very fundamental problems. So I never want any of you to forget that entrepreneurs are heroes. And so they create new jobs, they build value and sales from nothing, they make all of our lives better, they rebuild the economy, and they can and will rebuild this economy. But the word is rebuild. It has to be rebuilt. And it's not going to be rebuilt by the guys who are huge and doing the same thing over and over. It's going to be rebuilt by small businesses that are just getting going, and they're saying, hey, what if we do this? What if we do that? So these entrepreneurs are great heroes, and so I think we should all sing to them. Are we ready? Okay. Technical difficulties, which will go away when some great entrepreneur solves this. But can you hit it back there? Okay, so I had a great opportunity here to, I was at a nonprofit organization, and I was able to bid on something where this total major rock star, top of the charts for about 4 decades, was going to write the music if I wrote the lyrics, if I bid the highest. So I did, I bid the highest, and it was, I wasn't going to put my hand down because I had this sort of thing in mind. And so I decided I would dedicate that song to all those great entrepreneurs out there. And, and I've been screaming. Yes, I've been screaming. Yesterday I was screaming all day. So this is going to be a little tricky, but we're going to go ahead and do it. So hit it. So sing along. It'll help. Oh, yeah. Invested all his mattress money, divorced his prom queen, hometown honey, scraping up his alimony. Friends think he's a little funny. Needs a world-class CEO, just another million or so. Get him to some real cash flow, so tears and sweat can IPO. For 15 years he's been outgunned, bankers demanding blood refund, companies looking moribund, even Draper will not fund. Oh, he is the risk master. Sorry. Okay, this is where I want you to sing along. Drives faster, skates on the edge of disaster. He is the risk master. He's got a mission, company vision, artist's ambition, gut intuition, fearless and free employee, no guarantee for the corporate escapee, team fights on against the trend, had to lay off his best friend. Called a recession. Seems like depression. Chapter 7. Is this the end? Then a salesman shouts, "We got it! The company's gonna show a profit." To think the papers rang, quick sigh. The sky is open, astronautic. Now everybody. He is the risk master, lives fast, drives faster, skates on the edge of disaster. He is the risk master. Okay, here we go. He is the risk master, lives fast, drives faster, skates on the edge of disaster. He's the risk master. He's on top of the world. At last they see it. Vision unfurled. Cash flow landslide. Now everyone wants a piece of his hide. Press wants him fried. Court wants him tried. Anyone this rich must have lied. Now we got a little instrumental. With the teeth behind the head. He is the risk master, lives fast, drives faster, skates on the edge of disaster. You know it by now. He is the risk master. He is the risk master. This is your last chance to sing. Drives faster, skates on the edge of disaster. He is the risk master. Okay, you cut it. Thank you. Good job out there. So I have time for questions, further entertainment. I do have another song. I'm not going to do that to you. Not till we got to get it right. Go ahead. I mean, I covered sort of a lot of different things, and I'm sure some. Yes.
How long has it been your VC career? How many years have you invested? How many disasters or success have you seen?
I have been in the venture capital business now 23 years, and I grew up with it. My father was in it. My grandfather was in it before him. My grandfather was the first one in the Silicon Valley. I have invested in 600 companies around the world, more and more international, so that we have actually it was interesting, between 2000 and 2008, we invested about 10% of our money outside the U.S., and we got 70% of the profits from there. So that's interesting. And we expect at least 51% of the companies to fail. And so how do we keep in business? Well, we take equity, so occasionally we get one that just keeps multiplying on itself, and that's what keeps us in business. And so we count on most of I guess most of the companies either just completely go out of business or are sold to other businesses. But we count on a few of them going public, and having a good public market for us is absolutely critical. And right now, it's not just that the prices are down, it's that the regulations are too tough. And these regulations were the best of intentions for the biggest companies in the world, and they get, it ripples down. And so all that money that you have to spend on accountants and lawyers, whatever, to get your company public is no longer worth it until you're a really big company, and we just can't get our companies public. And we rely on that market because our investors rely on that market to continue. That was more than you asked for. Yes, Trish.
What are you advising Obama to do to stimulate young girls?
Well, the first thing I actually thought to do, she said, what am I advising Obama to do to revitalize the whole economy, not just the entrepreneurial economy? Well, there are a few key items, but some of them are very fundamental. I actually think instead of the idea of bail out the banks, I look at it and I say this is an opportunity to deregulate. And it's so tough to get a government official to think deregulation at a time like this. They always get it wrong. When things are down, they hit you harder. Instead, and when things are up, they build you up too high. So I actually think you could actually benefit, and I'm throwing these ideas out. I'm not, because I know they're going to get filtered by people who are a lot smarter than I am. I actually think you should, in some ways, deregulate the banks, allow them, at least for a period of time, to have bigger leverage so that it goes, as opposed to giving them more money and letting them build up their balance sheet. Just let them loan a little bit easier, and so that they don't have to show that they're, based on a mark-to-market, they're now out of compliance with this regulation or that regulation. Give them a break and say, how about another, instead of whatever it was, 9 to 1 or whatever, go to 12 to 1 or 15 to 1 and allow the banks a little time for at least a period of time to loan more. That's one. I really think it's time to deregulate the small business environment. They really need to, pull all those regulations that were meant for companies that were the size of GE have to be pulled out. They say, oh, this is appropriate for GE, so it should be appropriate for all the public companies. And that's not true. GE's huge. And these other public companies are, just kind of getting their feet on the ground. And then some of the things he's doing, I actually think he should be lowering taxes right now because people are going to be hit really hard twice. They were hit hard with a bad stock market, and then they're going to be hit because their tax bill's coming. And so I think this is a time to allow people to just go reinvest, but, start spending. And I think the thing he should say when he is inaugurated is, go out there and spend money. Go out there and do stuff. Because with all the money the government has poured into the economy, we are going to probably have some inflation. So buy it now. In a year it's going to be a lot more expensive. So I think he should be encouraging consumption and encouraging investment and encouraging small business because it's clear that it's time for one of those economic reinventions. So thanks for that question. It's great. Yeah, next to Trish. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Experience there was fascinating. We started out thinking this is going to be very different. So we really need to, try something very different when we went to China. And what we did was we said, okay, we've got to fund these companies. And we started funding companies where they came in and they said they had great government connections. And we lost all our money doing that. And then we said, well, okay, before we give up on China altogether, why don't we just try what we do here? Which is we fund these guys who are kind of, fighting hard and trying new things, and they've got a new idea, and they've got a great vision, a lot of energy, and great leadership. Let's fund them. So even though they don't have any government connections or they aren't from some special family, so we funded them, and all of a sudden we had these huge successes. We funded the Google for China. We funded Baidu. It's enormous. We funded Focus Media, which is like the Clear Channel for China, and we funded Kongjong, which is a games company, which interestingly is selling it below the cash they have in the bank, and they're profitable. It doesn't make a lot of financial sense to me, but you know, that's what makes a marketplace. Anyway, China has been great. It's booming. Things are going very well there, and you know, a recession there means they grow at 8% instead of 11%, and I think they are good for us. I think China is good for us. It keeps us globally competitive. I mean, good for the U.S. It keeps the U.S. globally competitive. We get much more efficiency, there's a measure of worker efficiency, and I forget what it's called, but it makes us much more efficient, and so we actually get more productivity out of less hours now because of China. Yeah.
You adopted a contrarian philosophy 2 years ago at a conference. The best deals you ever did are the ones your partner said not to do.
That's not true.
Well, I'm wondering about the contrarian viewpoint and how it inspires you to make investments for others.
Oh, the contrarian viewpoint is an important thing. It has to do with being willing to put up with peer pressure and then say, I'm not going to do that. But on my partners, we have discovered something very interesting, and that is that we lose all our money when all of us think it's a good idea. So we have to figure out a way, and we have continually worked on it, a way of the voting system so that we're successful. And we're usually very successful when 2 of us think it's a good idea. There are 2 of 10. And if it's 1 of 10, it's usually not. So that's kind of what we've found as a partnership. Why don't I get somebody in the way back? Is there somebody with a hand up? Yeah, way back. Yeah. Oh, I would love to, but they told me to keep it quiet. Because he didn't write the lyrics, so he doesn't feel like... Well, you can go ahead and guess. Actually, what's happened is, with the lyrics, some entrepreneur came to me and he gives me the whole pitch on his company, and he goes, hey, he says, everybody else can go, but Tim, stay here. And I went, what? Okay. And then he goes, listen to this. And he hits, and then there's this whole new version of the Wristmaster by this guy, Kelly James, who is just totally rocking. And so now that's a part of our musical whole. This one, and then that one. And then I've now found five other versions. And we're working on, I've talked to Hammer about this. He's supposed to do a Hammer version, like a rap, you know. He wants a hip-hop something. And then we have a whole bunch of versions coming out. We're going to put them all together, and maybe you can get the CD. Or get it on iTunes or whatever. Yeah?
My guess would be David Foster.
No. This guy is top of the charts. #1 hits all the way across for 4 decades. Closer, but not right. Closer. It's in that kind of thing. Used to be with a band. No, I'm not going any further. Yeah.
A lot of our students still, especially when they understand what they're interested in, would like to pursue a career in venture capital. Has the landscape, because there's a lot of great
Yeah, so they get excited. So the question was, students get excited about the carried interest and how you can get really rich being a venture capitalist. And any advice for those students, and what advice should I give those students, whatever. For one thing, all markets ultimately go to perfect markets. They aren't perfect, but they ultimately go to perfect markets, so things start to balance out, as they did in the Silicon Valley over the last 8 or 9 years. I would suggest to them that they go after growth industries growth geographies and growth industries, but go after growth geographies and not try to all be Silicon Valley venture capitalists to get jobs. Instead, become sort of middle people between the entrepreneur and the investor in other parts of the world. And that may mean other parts of the U.S., because there are a lot of parts of the U.S. that really haven't had the benefit of this, virtuous cycle of entrepreneurship, venture capital, entrepreneurship, venture capital. So the best way really to get started is to be that middle guy between the two, and going out and getting joining a group is going to be much harder, and particularly a group that's in the Silicon Valley, because the market in the Silicon Valley has really gone flat. In fact, it has been a horrible market. There have been very few IPOs. So, but what they're learning about is the history of venture capital, which was tremendous up through about the year 2000. And then it went down precipitously, and then it picked up for a little while. It looked like it was going to be great again, and then we got hit by this thing. But then without a public market for these stocks, we're just hosed. Yeah?
What investment expectations do you have since 2009, and what geographies, what industries?
Well, I try not to give tips in the public market, because they just, then you come back and strangle me because, hey, that thing went down. Actually, it was because I gave a tip to my father-in-law, and it went from 12 to 2. That was the end. But it's anybody's guess. I know it's cheap now. It could get cheaper, because earnings may go down, so it could get even cheaper. And then, boy, what an incredible buying opportunity. That's the way I look at it. Wait for it just to get a little cheaper, and then just go. Am I going to invest? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Once everybody feels like the world has come to an end, you put every dime you and your relatives and everybody else have, and put it into the riskiest thing you possibly can. No, put it into the stock market. Well, starting to feel that way. I don't know if they've all completely given up yet, but 70% of them have. With that? How's your ear? Yeah. Way back. The easiest are when I really get a CEO who is so good that I make a suggestion and they say, yeah, we thought of that, but it doesn't make any sense. And then, the guy who actually has gone through, not saying that, but he's actually gone through the thinking that I kind of suggest, because I come kind of out of the blue. And then he or she has some great leadership that, where it just sort of feels like everything's kind of working. Those are the easiest, and we get the most credit for those. Those are Skype and Hotmail and Baidu. They had incredible leaders with great leadership. And they had they weren't just, they were flexible, they were creative, they tested things, they were, that kind of thing. It's interesting, we've had a lot of great entrepreneurs who are Indians. And I think it's because when they lived in India, it was, basic living. And they know that they can survive at that basic level. And so they push much higher because they figure, well, what's the worst that can happen? I go back to whatever I was doing in India. And I think there is something to that. Now, with entrepreneurship, I also think it has to do with a series of catalysts, either that have gone through their heads in their lifetime. They didn't get the girl they wanted. They had they saw the underdog win. They had those kinds of things, and then had a great feel for nature. Like they see how nature works, and kind of that marvel of nature. And then the other thing is, like, you guys can create catalysts inside your universities by saying, you engineers, here's your quarter. This is what you have to do this quarter. You have to start a business plan, a business, and you have to do it with somebody from this MBA program. You force that, and you'll get this, great catalyst of minds meeting where they kind of go, whoa, well, what is it that you're making? The MBA says, what is it that you're making? And the engineer says, well, I don't really trust business guys, but I got to do this for my, class. And so this is what I'm doing. And then he says, well, is there any market for that? And, well, I don't know. And then they get together, and then they start figuring it out. And the more of those kinds of things that happen, the better. The more mistakes you can create, the better. Because, okay, it's a little puzzler. Although I've given you the answer. Well, anyway, what do penicillin, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, America, electricity, and Velcro all have in common? They were all created by mistake. So, two things came together and, suddenly you had something cool. So I think that's, if you really want to encourage entrepreneurship, create catalysts. Force them to do weird things. Force them to get out of their safe world. Particularly the engineers and the scientists. Force them to go do other things. And force them to interact with somebody in the business world. We done? Here's the hook. Thank you very, very much. This is a pleasure.
Tim, I'm